we're here basically to talk about how you start your tech career. If you're at the beginning, coming out of university, or actually looking at career changes, it doesn't matter where you are and what point you're at, we want to tell you that there is a route in for you if this is what you want to do. Can we have a show of hands to begin with? Charlotte just suggested this for people who are already working as software engineers or people who want to get into. So how many of you are working as software engineers at the moment? So one here.
2, 3.
Oh, there we go. Amazing. And are you here as recruiters? Yeah, or just so. That's the other thing to bear in mind. Hackathons, it's a really good place to actually find your first job. This is something that is really, really important, that there are different opportunities when you come to events like this. You will meet people, and it's really good to talk to everyone that's at the stands as well, and do like a good tour of the stands. So, is everyone else here looking for a career who's looking for a career as a software engineer? What about other areas of tech? There we go.
Everything.
So that's what we really want to focus on. That it's not just about software engineering, it's also about up-leveling your skill, and I'm going to leave that also to talk for Edith and Charlotte to talk about in a little bit more detail if you want to talk. It's not just about getting into a career as a software engineer. I can talk a bit more about like really converting into a software engineer and getting a career and the different routes there. So I work for makers. I work on products and partnerships, and we are essentially a software engineering boot camp who can essentially take someone from the start of their thing with very, very rudimentary skills in coding and go in 16 weeks to a junior developer, and that's the aim of what we do. And we partner with organizations like Codebar and Codefirst girls, who do a lot of like the front level training and trying to also make people understand, particularly underrepresented groups, that this is a door and this is a route that is open to them. And that's a bit of what we want to talk about, like that it's not just that there's one route into this career, there are so many ways you can get into it, and we want to start showing you which doors are open, and that it's just time. Like, don't wait, start now. So, Charlotte is from Codebar. They're an incredible organisation that do weekly workshops across the country. Actually, hang on, you're on 4 continents now? So 23 chapters on 4 continents, and they run weekly workshops for anyone underrepresented in tech, and it's coding workshops. And they have their own curriculum and the rest of it. It's amazing. I'm going to let her talk a bit more in detail about that. And then I've got Edith from Codefirst Girls. Now, Codefirst Girls how many people have you now trained? It's
more than 10,000.
More than 10,000 people, or 10,000 women, and it's women and non-binary,
yes.
Right? Have been trained, had training courses, free Codefirst Girls training courses. And this is, again, everything is about accessibility and seeing the routes that are available to you, because there are many more than you think there are, and you just got to, it's time to take them, essentially. And Funmi is is actually a graduate of all 3. She started with Codefirst Girls, then when also was going to Codebar, then she came to Makers Academy and basically got her first job at a hackathon. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's something like where they just met her and like, yeah, we'll take you. And now volunteers as a tutor at Codebar and Codefirst Girls. So she's going to talk a little bit about the journey that you can take and the different routes. But yeah, I'm going to leave it to them now and start with Charlotte.
Great. I was going to argue that, no, but this works. So thank you for coming. I'm a director at Codebar. And essentially Benita has already mentioned that Codebar teaches underrepresented groups coding for free. So it's quite a fluid definition. It's really about what the industry is currently going through. But for a long time, it has been, women and LGBTQ community members and other ethnic minority. So the way our workshops work is we get tech sponsors, essentially companies, tech companies in the city, that they offer up space as well as food and drinks for our members to come after work hours. So the workshop tends to be around, starts from 6:30 p.m. and lasts until 9. And the experience you get as a student is you get paired up with someone who already works in the industry. You get to essentially do kind of pair programming for 2 hours. And in that, you are able to, essentially pursue a learner-led learning journey. While we do have curriculums, we don't impose that on you. You're more than welcome to be working on your own project. The only requirement is hopefully that's not a project you're getting paid for, because it wouldn't be fair for the coaches. And we also have annual hackathons and events. So it's really a friendly community, a great way for you to become kind of familiar with what the tech scene is like. And before you even get your first job, you probably would have visited 10, 20 companies. And that's a way for you to know whether you like those companies. Because, job is always a two-way street.
Edith, can you tell us about Codefirst?
So I work for Codefirst Girls, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise. We have been running since 2013, and we just reached our 10K mark, as Benita has mentioned. Whilst this is a slightly unofficial number, according to the statistics we have, that means we have taught more girls than currently universities are teaching. Which is obviously, it's not a competition and it's different levels, but it shows, again, the accessibility of these courses. Our audience is 18 to 23-year-old students, women and non-binary, or recent graduates, so the age can be a bit higher if you are or were a full-time student. We are, at the moment, this semester, running 90 courses all across the UK and in Ireland. We will be having a pilot project outside of Europe as well, in Iraq. We'll see how will that go, but we have started the collaboration with a female university in there, so that's very exciting to see how that goes. And in that 90 courses, we have more than 2,000 students per semester that we're teaching. We have 2 levels: HTML, CSS, which is kind of the introduction to web development. And then we have Python for web development. We kind of call it level 2. It's not exactly like, directly related to each other, but you would need the level 1 to kind of go there. And we also operate, so our team itself, we are only 7 people. And on there, in the community side, the communities team, where I'm the communities program manager, we're only 5. So the 5 of us are working to make sure all of these courses are accessible and there and provides that opportunity. But the way we operate is all on volunteer basis. So we wouldn't be able to do what we do without our incredible volunteers. As obviously Fumi will say as well, she's one of them. We have women who want to give back, who started, a few years ago as people who had 0 experience in coding, and now actually are regularly teaching our courses. We have men who just wants to participate and again give back and help to kind of even out the gender imbalance. And every semester, I think, we have around 400 instructors teaching these courses. And our partner companies who provide us with space as well. Not as often food, but maybe this is something that I should take into consideration as well. And that's how we can do what we do, really.
So I think that's a really important point. Both of these organisations rely on volunteers as coaches, and it also has a really, really important impact on how safe the space feels. There's something about this idea of giving back, and I notice this when we do workshops with Codebar. There's something very inclusive about the community that's been created, and I think that a lot of people, particularly women, actually struggle, and non-binary and LGBTQ communities, actually thinking that it's accessible in the fact that actually it would be, that they would be rejected in a space. And there's something about a community that's great and the way that communities are built in this and the people that are volunteering that makes it a very special space to go and be and actually learn. And it's one of the, I think that you can't underestimate the power of a safe learning environment for also how good it is for you and how much of an impact it can have on you. And that's the point that I'm going to come to Lindy, because she can talk a little bit more about being at both sides of it, actually.
Yeah, cool. So can everyone hear me? My journey kind of started in late 2016, was it? When I was looking to get into coding and tech, and I was trying to find out like what courses are available. Yeah, basically how do I train to become a developer? My background, like education-wise, was in economics. I have a degree in that. I'd worked in some like admin and accounting related jobs, and I've always been interested in IT and computers. And at the point that I had like worked enough, I got enough work experience to figure out what I didn't like. I was like, oh yeah, let me actually try and get into this thing that I'm always dreaming about. And so I found out about Codefirst Girls from like a classmate in my accounting class actually. And I was just like, oh, this is perfect for me. This is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. So I got onto the part-time beginners course. So their courses are part-time, which is great if you're working as well. And then I just started going to that for 8 weeks. So it was the HTML, CSS beginners course and learning to code in my own time and kind of finding that community of like, women in tech and slowly building up that network was really good. And so once I graduated from Codefirst Girls, started going to Codebar as well, which, like Charlotte said, you get paired up with people that are already working in tech. So that's really cool because you start meeting people with experience, people that also haven't done computer science, but then they now work as software engineers. And so at the time that I was going to Codebar was when I was thinking of doing Makers Academy, which is a full-time coding bootcamp. Because I was like, yeah, I know I want to pursue this like full on, and I really wanted to get that training and get that right training, which is what Makers provided. And yeah, basically once I decided to apply, because actually when I went to Codebar, my first coach was a Makers graduate.
Great.
And that was really inspiring for me.
You'll find that a lot. There are certain...
all the communities.
Yeah,
just
there's
like
a lot of
mesh,
overlap in the communities, so it's one of the things, like I said, it's not just the value of the fact that it's actually quite a welcoming and open community, it's that you're then once you come into it, you're connecting with a lot of different people who are also going to have a vested interest in helping you and actually getting you there. When we say coaches, they also become mentors, and I think a lot of mentoring relationships have started through these connections. And so I think it's almost like it sounds strange, but I'm also pitching the fact that there's a whole community out there of support for you, and people are actually invested in and want this change. They want more diversity in tech, and there are just so many opportunities for you because of this.
Yeah, and then so Makers, that happened. I got accepted into the course, and I guess like through the whole journey, this was all about 5 months up until I had gotten accepted into the course. I had just been going to lots of events and networking and just meeting people, and then I went to a hackathon with a group of friends, which. Like I went there with the mind of I'm just going to learn and just see how things go. But I was also interested in the company, and so that hackathon led to me getting my first interview and then job offer as a software engineer, which is then the job I went on to once I graduated from Makers Academy. So it was great because it all just lined up perfectly. But like all the people that I met and people that became my mentors and everyone was just really supportive, introducing me to different people in their network, and yeah, it was just an amazing experience having gone through all of those communities, and yeah.
I should know this, but did you have your did you have the job lined up then before you did Makers Academy?
Yes, yeah.
That's which is unusual. I should be honest about that. That is unusual. Most people actually get their jobs after, and they go into job hunting periods after they complete the course, because it's quite intensive and you can't really apply for jobs whilst you're. I wouldn't recommend trying to apply for jobs whilst you're on the course. But yeah, that's quite unusual as a pathway, but that's very cool.
Yeah, and yeah, since then, I'm now on my second job. I work as an iOS engineer. I'm just learning a lot, and yeah, I love the career that I have now, and it's just great to be in tech.
Any regrets from changing from accounting to?
No, nah, I wouldn't go back. Yeah.
So we are going to give a chance for you to also ask some questions, but I want to talk a little bit more before that on why it matters that we do what we do. So at Makers we work very hard, for example, with partnering with Codebar and Codefirst Girls and different organisations on how we basically get more applications from women and non-binary and underrepresented groups more widely. Because it's also about like how do we reach out, because it's not the same communication that we're needing to do, and how do we do that? And one of the things that I guess I want to ask the panel about is, why is that important? And so why is what you do important?
Yeah, sure. So I have worked as an engineer for a while, and I guess my first engineering job was in a space that was quite typical of a tech company, when the average stat of female engineers in most tech companies tend to be around 12%. And so a typical tech team is about like 10 people. So you're literally the only woman. And it's easy to, I guess, underestimate what kind of psychological impact being in that environment might have on you. Because I guess I saw myself with like, I guess outgoing personality. I didn't think it was going to be as challenging, but it was. And in contrast, the community you experience at, say, Codebar, Codefirst Girls, or Makers, it's how the society really is like, like it's all these different people, international, all love learning, and you get so much energy from being in that space versus in the average, I guess, tech scene. It's quite easy to feel rather drained. At least that was my experience. So I think that's also the reason why so many people working tech are inspired to contribute and help recruit more diverse candidates. And not to mention, it's actually in companies' interest as well, because companies are creating products for people. If the people making it don't represent society, chances are there will be plenty of blind spots, and we make inferior products. It's not benefiting anyone. So I think, and when I researched into the history of women in computing, some of you might have watched movies and have some sense of back in the day, actually there were more women in tech, only women in computing. And it's around 70s when this whole advertisement around gaming happened, somehow completely changed. And we have not been able to pick back up since.
And interestingly, the history has also been wiped. So you'll have seen the posters around the whole building today that are just advertising different brilliant women, brilliant scientists who changed computer science. And I saw Ada Lovelace, I've seen like a few others around. But actually that history is almost, apart from these like few examples, and partly because of Hidden Figures, the film, like sort of it moving into popular culture, we're starting to see that actually the history of computing was definitely not actually how it's been sold, how we see it now and how we're experiencing it. And uncovering that history is so important as well in like actually getting, I think, representation and recognition from a historical point of view, but also actually inspiring younger younger generations to say, this is actually your history too, and this is something that you're part of, and representation matters. So.
Charlotte obviously raised some really good points when it comes to products and inferior products. So if we kind of go from a more economical look at all of this, according to figures, by 2020, the tech industry will need another 1 million staff members. We do not have that number. Obviously, unrelated to this, but we might be struggling with the influx of people because of Brexit and other kind of political situations. So the combination of an already massive gap and the potential of not having more people coming in from other countries will have a massive effect. So we don't have the talent, or we have the talent, but we're not tapping into it. So that is one side of it. Second, the IT industry in the UK, or technology industry in the UK, is the fastest growing industry, and probably after financing, if I'm correct, the second highest revenue generator as well. I'm pretty sure that was the latest one I have read. And then again, we don't have the representation there for women. And then third in there, those jobs, the technology sector jobs, are 36% above average pay of the UK basics. So we have these well-paid, safe, excellent opportunity positions. We have a massive shortage, on the other hand, and there's no combination for these two, really, at the moment, because we are not tapping into 51% of the population. And then when it comes to the products that you have mentioned, it is one of my favorite examples to use when I'm having these conversations or debates, is that the health app, I think on the iPhone one, did not take period tracking into it for years. That was not an option. And then the Fitbit one limited it at 7 days. That was it. Why? Because they did not have any female engineer on those teams who could say that, yeah, but guys, this is not how it works. It can be less, it can be more, you know. And they would know that if there would have been some kind of representation. Which sounds funny, but it's, you know, it sounds like a small thing, but it has massive effects. And you know, we're not even talking about the long-term effects. So for example, why are all the artificial intelligence robots are female? Siri, Cortana, Alexa, why? Why do they have to be gendered, and why are they female? Like so many incredible kind of aspects of it, and it all stems from not having the same representation in the industry, in the workplaces that we have as a population. So the reason for Codefirst Girls really is to be a first step. As you have seen from Funmi's step, it's a beautiful combination of these organizations. You know, we are here together. So I have just finished my HTML level 1 course because I thought that I should do this myself as well. And then at the end, students came to me and said, so what could we do? What's the next step? What can I do? Because I'm really interested. And my first one was say, well, if you want to go on the website that you have built and go more and make it better, you could go to Codebar because they have this project. If you're very, very serious about it, also take a look at Makers Academy because that's also an option. And we have all of this kind of like, you know, beautiful ecosystem of companies kind of working together, and we're all here to help. And Codefirst Girls is really, in a way, it's really the first step because we try to demystify this whole kind of technology industry and make sure that, yeah, it's gonna be great learning, you know, with 20, 25 other girls who are just as clueless as you are in the beginning, but you feel safe and you feel supported because everyone who's there are working towards the same goal.
So one of my favorite examples is still the Ford crash test dummies, the classic one.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you know that one. The crash test dummies, when they were originally designed, they were designed around men's bodies. So when the cars were rolled out, what they found when the accidents were happening were essentially that women and children kept dying. That's actually just the way that it rolled out. And that, well, that's a very extreme example of that's why it matters. That's why representation matters, I think, because it already would have changed the way, it would have actually changed real fatal outcomes for a lot of people. And I think that is, obviously it's a bit different when you're dealing with software, but these are the sorts of things that you want to talk about, and it matters that you join this it's so important that you actually, if you're interested in this, don't hold yourself back. There are all of these safe ways for you to get into it, and you will be supported. I think that's the other thing. And I'm going to go to Funmi now to talk a bit more about that journey and how you felt about also, because now that you're a software engineer, so you're in this and you're actually dealing with that imbalance more regularly. And is that part of why you have gone back to volunteer and why it's so important to you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, so the imbalance is very, very apparent. Like most teams, there's either 1 or 2 women, maybe it's like 10, or the whole engineering team is men, really. But yeah, I guess for me and for most people I've seen that have gone through similar journey to mine, where they've either maybe not studied computer science, or they've been supported by the community. So naturally you have that like feeling or you just want to give back and encourage people and help people, and yeah, just being able to teach other people like the same way that you were taught as well. So yeah, like for me, I enjoy it, and since I think it was when I graduated from Makers, I went back on to coach at Codebar, and then since then tried to help with workshops, and then just recently went as a tutor on like the Python Codefirst Girls course, which for me, I don't code in Python day to day, but the concepts that you learn in different languages are all similar, and as long as you can teach people and you can help them, so that's kind of all you need to just give back and just be there to say, yeah, sometimes it's just a syntax error, just like delete that line, everything is fine, but
or just save and refresh.
Refresh your browser. But like, yeah, giving back is just really important, and I've noticed it's not as, maybe not as important to other people that have come through traditional backgrounds, or they're just not aware of it. So like, I've been in teams where I've like just shared, if I'm going to coach at something, try to get my teammates to come with me and like get them seeing, I guess, what the outside world is also people trying to get into the industry have to kind of go through. But yeah, it's really trying to combine those two worlds and making everyone have empathy for each other. So it's like empathizing with the other side as well. And yeah.
So I think there's a couple of really important points that you touched on there. One, the fact that it's not coming from a traditional computer science background, and the fact that there's still a route in, which is really important to understand. And then also this idea that actually, as a mentor and as a coach, it actually grows you.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people come back to both Codefirst Girls and to Codebar and to different organizations, because it actually grows them and makes them better. So there's a return on the investment in that. Which
you learn as you teach, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The best way.
The best way.
And just adding one thing, and not to mention, it's actually fun. Like, we have participants who like literally wait by the website, refreshing it, hoping to sign up for the Wednesday workshop, but it's a central London schedule, because it's not just a learning opportunity. You end up bonding with the people there. You walk away with a family. So yeah.
I'm going to open the floor up now to questions. I need to pass over the mic.
Questions from the audience? Okay, excellent.
That was really wonderful. Thank you so much. Actually, specifically for Makers Academy, but it sounds like Codebar and Codefirst Girls are amazing part-time opportunities to get women interested in code. So I run Tech Pixies, which helps women who've taken career breaks go back to work. And actually one of the reasons I started it is because not a single mother I know or woman who's taken a career break can do a 12-week intensive program in London if they live anywhere else in the country. Yeah. So I guess my first question is, do you have plans to roll out online? And the second question is, do you have plans to roll out a part-time program and help women get into part-time work in tech? Because that's where I feel like we're getting the biggest struggling bit for women.
So first, you're talking to the right person because I work on the partnerships. We have been thinking, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, not just necessarily the starting point. I always think, especially when it's a new product, is not necessarily like the end of like thinking what it might look like. Is it definitely a part-time course? Is it definitely this? That's not necessarily what it is. It's almost like we have to figure out what the need is first. So the point that we're at is we're having conversations with different organizations and partners like Codebar and like Codefirst Girls to figure out, because also, so for example, Codebar wouldn't work for returning mothers, partly because it's in the evening. So there are different organizations that do so Tech Mums is an amazing example. Sue Black running, like, just incredible. And also that's digital skills. And so how do you do not just digital skills, but actually getting into software engineering? And the gap is there, and connecting those, it's more than, and that's why I always think community is so important, because if we make the products without actually consulting the community, it's not going to fit. So it's understanding and having those conversations. And personally, I think that just from a product perspective, I think it's more important to actually get the feedback loop built first to understand what the need is and how we can fill that, rather than just trying to put out a product that might not fit. I've seen like some different boot camps starting to do like the part-time courses, but again, they're evenings and weekends. So how do we fill that gap, and how do we do it in a way that actually responds to the real need? Those are the conversations that we need to have. And I'd love to talk to you more about this, because I think it's really, it's one of the things that we do have amazing case studies of people who have done makers. So we have incredible examples of women who've done it while they've been on maternity leave, and they've actually gone and done, and to me, that blows my mind. I have no idea how this has happened, because it is so intensive, which for me can say it's 12 weeks where you're working more than full-time hours, because you do the weekend challenges and the rest of it. And so I've thought about this a lot. And I also think it's important to say that Codebar can talk a little bit, because you've rolled out some of your remote courses as well now, right? So I'm going to pass over there as well.
Yeah, so we started to do virtual Codebar, and funny enough, the most grateful participants are moms. I think for them, the evening in-person workshop is just way harder to manage. And the current schedule, I mean, the vision for the virtual Codebar is will allow people to use it anytime, anywhere. But because to this point, we still rely on coaches. And since they are working, the availability is somewhat limited. But we're testing with more a peer-to-peer model. So if the moms have similar schedule, they can come on together, and in working through things as a pair, they can hopefully learn better. And if they still have questions, they can then ask, say, on weekends when we do centrally organized sessions. That's something. I'm happy to speak more and see if we can onboard your community member.
Yeah, we'll have any more questions?
Any more questions from the audience?
You can ask anything. On practical questions, on how to apply, how to register, anything.
And just to add, like Codebar doesn't have age limitation, so we have, a student who's, this one student I'm thinking of, absolutely amazing, a 59-year-old ex-math teacher who started to teach her students computing because that's mandatory, and then in having, tried it a little bit, she got so interested and decided to change her career. Yeah.
I have two questions. Actually, my very first question was the same. How about people who are returning and want to career change? So related to that, are there part-time jobs in the industry? Because lots of people returning to work do still want to work part-time. And then the second question is, I'd be interested in your thoughts on how we address attitudes in children. I used to be a reception class teacher, and I used to see kids coming in with really already gendered ideas about what men and women did as jobs later on, and a lot of that was coming from home, but I'm sure we can get them early, and we can make it seem interesting and exciting, so I'd be really interested in your ideas on that. I'm not teaching anymore, but...
So, okay, so the first question on part-time job, I think this is something that involves, and actually I think the answers to both questions are similar, it's about education. And at the moment we're still educating the industry, and I think that that's why organisations like this matter, and that's why also representation in those places matters, because the more women you have in those places, for example, going on maternity leave and then returning, they're forced to change. And it's unfortunate that that's the way that it's working at the moment, but that's what I think we all have different responsibilities to educate. And there are incredible organisations working like Tech Mums, and like these are the organisations who are leading and there are thought leaders in this area saying, the value that you're losing is far more than you can comprehend, but it's almost like going back to those basics, which almost feels like 1970s arguments that you're having sometimes, but you are sometimes having those arguments. And I don't know if the industry is there, and because I don't have the figures, I don't want to give like anything because it's more anecdotal, the evidence. I'm not convinced the jobs are there at the moment, but I think that actually the responsibility of us is to create them, is to make them like actually this is where we need to go, and you need to understand the benefit of actually the resource that you are accumulating is far more than you think, that it's a false economy in actually not investing in part-time roles, essentially. So,
I was going to say, and I've seen more companies are now allowing flexible working, which will then be more conducive for people that have kids or just other responsibilities outside of the office. So yeah, that's always a good one to look out for in jobs. So like, is it flexible? Can you work from home? Do you have to like be there all the time?
There's definitely contract work that is higher in the industry because of the, you can do it from whenever and wherever really, if the project is finished. Again, I also don't have figures. It's just what I see in the companies that we work on the same floor with, or my friends who are all in software engineering, which is obviously one of the best options for returning mothers, is really to have the contract work.
I think, I was going to just say there's a contract where the working from home options, the flexible options are really, really important, but it's also about remembering that, and this is something that I think, as particularly I felt I struggle with as a woman, it's also about asking and saying that this is what you want. And then there's something that Funmi said as well, which is looking at the job descriptions, because that will tell you a lot about a company already. And remember the value of yourself. Like, you are adding value to this company, so they also have to deserve you. And I think there's like understanding that. So if they are not willing to make the changes that you need, then they don't deserve you. That's how I approach it.
And just based on my experience, also anecdotal, I think a lot of tech companies are quite okay with, say, if you work 4 days a week. It kind of depends on what kind of part-time you are referring to. And the fact, a lot of tech companies are open to remote work. You can indeed plan your day around it. So I've seen a lot of moms making it work. So yeah.
Does anyone else want to talk about educating children? And because I think that's a whole. I mean, that's another. Because it's important to catch kids early. And I know it sounds really bizarre, but I think the Doctor Who's having an impact that we didn't really anticipate, which I think is amazing. And just see from my own nephews and nieces, like it's already having an impact that I didn't think it could have the kind of impact that it has had. And so just the fact that my 10-year-old nephew is like, well, obviously the best Doctor is Jodie Whittaker. Okay. So I think that even small shifts like that in our media, all of these things, they have an impact that we don't even necessarily realize ourselves. And so, yeah, I think it's something that's so much bigger than just what can be done in schools. It's so much. And again, I'd go back to representation matters.
Yeah. Well, I don't have kids, but I think I've heard parents who are aware of tech and they're now like trying to raise their kids, if maybe they have a boy and a girl, to make sure that they're not gendering and not talking to like both kids differently, and they should both be able to do the same things or have interests that aren't like, I don't know, games are for boys and girls go play with dolls, or boy plays with computer, girl, I don't know, plays with mud, whatever it is they tell you to play with. But yeah, it's just removing those kind of languages and how you speak to your younger ones or like kids around you. Yeah, I still have those conversations with my parents where they're like, oh, your younger sister can't do this because, I don't know, it's for boys or blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, it's not. You can do whatever you want. So, yeah.
I also think that kind of the education part is part of a lot bigger conversation that kind of all goes around of the gender roles and the way we kind of deal with them.
There are loads of this videos that you can see that they did in Sweden, which is obviously a bit more closer to the equal society, or that BBC video when they told a stranger that this baby is a boy or a girl, and then even though it was the other way around, and they chose, the grown-ups who were babysitting in the video and chose completely different toys to play with them and how they spoke, and so it's part of that. It starts from that. But I watched a very interesting TED talk that was about how one of the biggest things we could do for girls is to teach them confidence, because apparently by the age of 6, the girls are already thinking in schools that they are less good in certain things than their boy
counterparts. They are slower. They are not as smart. They're not as good as mathematics, even though up until, I don't know, 12 or something like that, all of their statistics are always higher. So it's partially, again, like the conversation around it, and just, I do agree with representation, having superheroes, having these women who can do whatever they want, and they are just as strong and fast and everything as the boys. That's a start, I guess.
Yeah. And to add on that, I think, information we feed to parents matter a lot. Parents are children's best teachers end of the day. And also when we look at like the general industry of tech and imbalance, China and India have less of a problem. Yeah, I mean, there are many other problems, but in this particular area, less so. And I think a lot of it have to do with, the need. Their target is more about getting the best job, and all these gender concerns are not there, right? They know tech pays well, and it's stable. That's what they aim for. So somehow, if maybe we can make people care more about just having a comfortable life, I mean, maybe.
I think so the one thing I was going to say, it's also about educating all children. I think that's the thing, socializing all children. It's not just about educating girls as if the responsibility is on them, and that I think is really important. And now I think we have to close and we're going to finish up, but we will be around, and there's a maker's stand in the other room. If you want to ask us any questions, please do come to us and ask. And yeah, okay, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you.